Okay, it appears that we are back. I do see one of these little circles going like this, so I'm going to wait until I see that circle stop. But oh, no, we are live. Excellent. Welcome to Day Drinking with Wes Hagen, part two, for this beautiful Wednesday, the 22nd of July, in the glorious and terrible year of 2020. Thank you guys for joining me. I hope you have something delicious in your glass. Looks like we have a full crew out watching. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Without you guys watching, I probably wouldn't have a job. Everything I have to do is a little bit on the remote side at this point. So as I was saying earlier, we're finishing our national sales meeting for the Miller Family Wine Company. And it seems like everything out there in the world, even though it's crazy and everything, people are still buying wine and people are still buying our wine. So thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate all of your support. You can always go over to millerfamilywines.com. You can always go over to jwilkes.com. We always have some interesting stuff. You can always enter DD50 as a promo code to see what works, what happens. We always have cool specials, and we always have some delicious wine. So thanks again, and so much for the commercial part of the broadcast. Now we're going to talk, and with any luck, get to an understanding in 15 to 20 minutes at the max about how grapes are farmed and how that farming, I'm going to use this term cultural practice. Cultural practice just means what we do on the farm. So if I say a cultural practice would be like running a tractor through the rows during dormancy and basically disking or cultivating the ground for whatever reason. Another cultural practice would be spraying sulfur. Another cultural practice would be removing leaves from the vine. So when I say cultural practice, just read that as something we do in the vineyard, and there's a purpose for it. It's a practice cultural is a weird word in this context, but I think you get it. So there's a few concepts you need to understand. First thing you need to understand is what shaded fruit does to a wine. One thing you might notice if you ever look at a raisin farm or a farm for really incredibly cheap wine, $2 you'll notice that the vines in Fresno and the vines in the San Joaquin Valley tend to be a very big, large sprawl. And when you drive by the vineyards, you're like wondering, well, where the heck are the grapes? Because I don't see a damn grape out there. That's a problem. That means that basically all the leaves in the way that the grapes are being farmed, cheap, low labor, not a lot of hand labor going on at all for stuff where you're getting 7 to 10 tons per acre for raisins or for Peter Vella or some type of boxed wine where they're really just trying to make it cheap. One thing you'll notice about those wines, really, really cheap, especially red wines, really cheap white wines might taste a little like olive juice or canned asparagus. And red wines that are really, really cheap. And they're getting better at this because in these cheap wines, they're doctoring them with certain chemicals that hide these flavors. Maybe a little like Alicante Boucher, extract or something. But when you grow grapes in a shaded canopy, you get vegetal and vegetative aromas. Listen to that again. When you grow grapes in a shaded canopy and the grapes never have the opportunity to be flecked by sunlight, you end up with vegetal and vegetative flavors in the wine and in the grapes and in the wine. Now, exposed fruit. This is really important to understand. University of California, Davis, as well as Dr. Richard Smart, who wrote that great book we were just talking about, Sunlight into Wine, determined that if you measure sun in the canopy, that all you need to do is get at least 10% of the ambient sunlight in the environment through the canopy to be exposed on the fruit. Why does it matter that there's sunlight on grapes? Because sunlight on the skins of grapes fundamentally changes the chemistry of the juice and the phenolic compounds within the skins of the grapes. Think about it like this. The things that we love about wine, color, flavor, extract, deliciousness, the lack of vegetative and herbaceous aromas are all caused by the chemical changes that grapes go through as a result of protecting themselves from the sun. So right as the grapes begin to, basically they're done with flowering and they begin to have these little pea-sized grapes on them, the key is we got to pull the leaves. We got to pull the leaves out of the canopy as much as we can without potentially frying the fruit in the sun. And again, in Napa Valley, the way you pull leaves is much different than in Sonoma or down in Santa Rita Hills or in a cool climate region where you can pull a little bit more leaves because there's less intense sunlight and heat. So the key is to make the best wine. The most important thing is to open up the canopy to sun and wind and put as much sunlight on that fruit as the fruit can handle in a normal year without burning, without raisening, or without having their skins compromised and cracking. If you put too much sun on fruit, you get cracked fruit, it burns. So you always want to make sure when you're doing canopy management that you consider that and maybe leave a couple leaves to cover the fruit between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. when the sunlight is the most intense. So I call that the sombrero leaf. It is the leaf that kind of protects the fruit from the hottest part of the day. But from sun up to 10 o'clock and from 2 o'clock to sundown, I want as much sun on that fruit as possible in a cool climate viticultural area, such as Santa Maria Valley or Santa Rita Hills. I suspect I've never grown fruit in Sonoma Coast. I've never grown fruit in Arroyo Grande or Edna Valley, but I would say that would be probably par for the course in those cool climates. So the most important thing that I want you to think about in viticulture and how it affects Chardonnay specifically, it's going to affect everything, but opening up that canopy. Remember the stomata? Remember the stomata of the leaves? What do? What does stomata of the leaves do? They respire both carbon dioxide, which is wonderful for the environment, as well as they're giving off oxygen. They're absorbing carbon dioxide, sucking up carbon dioxide, giving off oxygen, but also giving off water vapor. So think about where all the fruit is, right? Best thing about being low on blood sugar is drinking beer. Bar none. I don't like sugar. I don't like candy. I don't like cakes. Beer is the most amazing thing to moderate blood sugar because it lasts. It's not like a sugar spike. Anyways, so when you're growing grapes in that sunny canopy, it's really, really incredibly important for the final flavor of the wine. So if you remember, and we're talking about moisture. So if you're producing water vapor from the interior of the leaves, the water vapor tends to stick in that little gap where the fruit lives, the fruit zone. So the fruit zone is kind of hollow. It's one place in the vine where there's no leaves. There's leaves on the outside, and a gap in between. And you can imagine as the water vapor is escaping with the oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis, that the water vapor basically concentrates. So the biggest problem is in a full canopy with more than one leaf layer, 2 or 3 leaf layers between the sun and the fruit, that water vapor is just going to continue to become more and more. It's basically the intensity of the water vapor is going to increase. And what does water vapor do? It gives us mildew pressure. It gives us rot pressure. Insects love that kind of moist environment. So, and also if you've got 2 leaves in front of every cluster, you drive your tractor through that section and you spray fungicide, whether it's organic or inorganic, conventional or whatever. You make a spray on the vine, you want that spray to have full contact on every cluster because many fungicides, many sprays that we do in the vineyard require every cluster to be soaked by that fungicide. So the fungicide touches the grapes and makes it. Now, you can imagine if you have a squirt gun, okay, and you're going through a vineyard and you're taking a squirt gun with dye. And this is actually something we do with spray rigs. We load them with dye and we run them through the vineyard and we check coverage to see where we see the dye. Coverage in an area, and you can imagine if you haven't done any canopy management, you're going to have 2 or 3 leaf layers between the spray rig and the grapes. So you want to pull the leaves. So when you run the spray rig through, you're getting 2 to 3 times more efficiency in your sprays. So you have to use less sprays because not only have you reduced mildew pressure, you've reduced rot pressure. You've reduced the amount of moisture within the canopy. It just makes your sprays more effective. It makes your viticulture more effective. And it is a purely organic, non-chemical way to reduce the amount of chemicals that we need to use in the vineyard. So proper canopy management does everything. Makes better wine, makes the chemicals we do use more effective, and reduces the amount of chemicals we need because there's less mildew and rot pressure because you have sun and wind. And think about moving wind through the canopy. Reduces the moisture, reduces the humidity. Very, very cool like that. So really, then you've got to talk a little bit about how you trellis your grapes. So a trellis is an artificial tree with no shade that allows a grape to have a structure in which to grow. Grapes are arboreal parasites. So grapes like to grow up a tree, steal the tree's light, kill the tree sometimes, and then use the dead tree to absorb sunlight in the forest canopy to produce delicious fruit, to attract animals to eat the fruit and disperse the seeds. That's basically why grapes exist. Well, you could argue why would, anyways, that's basically the why of grapes. So you have to have a structure to let the grapes grow up. Now, you can let the grape be its own structure. The most simple trellising for grapes is just, it's just basically a head pruned system. You basically let you keep reducing the size of the grape until it gets a big, gnarly trunk. And that trunk may be only 12, 18 inches, right? And then you basically maintain a head of the vine by cutting off all the growth from the vine every year to almost make it like a rose bush where it has almost a goblet shape. So then the shoots go up and they come out, and the light can come into the middle and still influence the clusters, and you can still pull some leaves in the middle. That's the most simple trellising system. It requires basically no stakes, no wires, head pruned or goblet trained grapevines. Then you have the sprawl system, which you'll see as you drive through anywhere around, especially around the Central Valley of California, San Joaquin, Fresno, Bakersfield. You'll see these massive vines with just a huge, it just looks like Cousin It or Wes Hagen, right? I mean, it's just, except you wouldn't even, so yeah, sprawl, right? If I can't see, grapes can't see, no sun. Again, sprawled vines generally are going into raisin production and incredibly cheap wine production. Then you have a quadrilateral or a lyre or a split system where you're using this in a system, in a place that has amazing and incredibly intense. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm drinking beer. I've been. My wife's phone gets my blood glucose level. It tends to be a little low. Beer's not cutting it. Remember, if you see me go man down, call my wife. She'll come in and save me. Granola bars and beer, my two saving graces. That was a Russian River Brewing Damnation. Their bottle conditioned attempt at a Belgian style beer that's probably one of my favorite 5 beers in the world. So we were talking a little bit about quadrilateral and lyre. This is really hard to discuss without showing you a picture. So just assume one single trunk comes up, and from the trunk, 4 different shoots and canes are trained off the head of the vine, and each of those 4 produce a piece of wood that produces growth each year. So like in a normal vineyard, you would have just 2 shoots coming up and growing fruit, and you would be getting maybe 2 tons. If your soil and your climate allows you to grow much more vigorously, you can split your canopy into 4 separate areas, quadrilateral. It can kind of look like a lyre, like a lyre that kind of comes up where there's a canopy going this way and a canopy going this way. Sunlight comes through, so you have sunlight ingress from the interior of the quadrilateral and on the outside of the quadrilateral. So you basically have the capacity to make a lot more wine and to allow just to harness the vigor of that soil and that climate. to allow that vigor to produce more wine, quite a bit more wine. Quadrilateral and lyre systems oftentimes can produce 6, 7, even 10 to 12 tons of fruit per acre, which is a ridiculous amount of fruit. Most vineyards in Santa Maria Valley and Santa Rita Hills are lucky to produce 2.5 to 3 tons in a really, really good year. So that gives you kind of an idea. Then there's a crazy system of trellising the vine called Smart Dyson. You might remember the term smart, going back to Dr. Richard Smart from Tasmania, who changed the world of wine by his book, Sunlight into Wine. So normally you put 2 canes out on a wire and then basically you rub off all the buds facing down and allow all the fruit to grow up. Or if a vine starts growing down, you gently encourage it to start growing upwards instead and put it into some shoot positioning wires. No, Smith Dyson, pretty cool stuff. So all the shoots that are facing up grow up, all the shoots facing down grow down, and you end up with 2 canopies. One moving down from the vine and one moving kind of up from the vine. And those 2 canopies, you can kind of pull leaves here and pull leaves here and have 2 full curtains of canopy. And it's almost like it's not quite a quadrilateral. I call it maybe a dilateral in the sense that it's going 2 different ways and producing 2 different fruit zones. Using those fruit zones and maintaining them is obviously very, very important. And then the last one that I'll describe, and then we're going to do this as a 2-parter Monday, or at some other point I'm going to do part 2 of canopy management, because we're going to need to go further into this. I still have canopy management start of the year to the finish of the year, but we're a little bit over time, so I'm going to give you guys some time to go have some delicious dinner and do some independent study and day drinking. Vertical shoot position trellis. This is the take-home message. If you want to know how, I don't know, how many percent of the world's wines are grown with a VSP, I'm going to go ahead and say 90% of the greatest wines in the world are grown using vertical shoot position and trellising. And this is what I mean by that. So when you have a vineyard, you have a grapevine with a trunk. Trunk grows up. At the top of the trunk is called the head. And the head produces these fruitful shoots that every year produce fruit. So the key is fruit is only produced significantly on last year's wood. So the key is either you have to keep little tiny sticks coming out of a permanent arm with lots of little sticks on it, these little sticks that were last year's growth that you gave a haircut to grow this year's fruit. Or you take brand new canes from the head and you wrap the canes around the wires, and then those canes produce the growth. In a vertical shoot position trellis system, you can either use the spur trained little kind of sticks coming out of permanent wood that start growing every year, or you can lay down a brand new shoot where there's just a couple of shoots, growing out of that. But the key is there's wires. So the wires are really going to go from about, 2.5, 3 feet, all the way up to about 5.5 feet. And there's going to be a lot of wires that may actually have sets of wires that maybe have 4 inches between them. And then the idea is you're going to weave every single shoot by hand. Yes, 1,000 to 2,000 vines per acre in a regular planting. You're going to take and 25 to 30 shoots per vine. So you do the math. That's a lot of hand labor. You have to literally take each and every shoot and carefully weave it through these wires. So every single shoot goes completely vertical shoot positioning. You want to make sure every shoot, which the vines want to do anyways because they want to grow up. So they want to grow up, and then you want to encourage them to go through the wires so you end up with a perfect solar panel of leaves absorbing sunlight, sort of on the east side in the morning, on the west side in the afternoon. In most vineyards, it absorbs the sunlight. Sunlight is translated into obviously sugar and or carbohydrates for growth, and then eventually sugar. It's an incredibly efficient system. and it's a system that is generally growing some of the greatest wines in the world. There's a modified system used in Burgundy, most of the great vineyards in California. You go to Napa, you see these perfectly manicured, vertically shoot positioned trellis. Sometimes they even hedge the top to make it just perfectly uniform. I mean, it makes you feel good, but it's not necessarily to grow the greatest wine. But vertical shoot position trellising, or VSP. If you want to sound like a geek, you go into a winery or into a vineyard, take a tour, tap the tour guide on the shoulder and say, oh, you really have a beautiful VSP system going on here. Really, really nice to see those solar panels. And really VSP, I'll close by saying one thing I love about VSP is it ends up really making a solar farm for making booze. So grapevines end up being a solar farm for the production of sugar. My job as a winemaker to take that sugar and transfer it into ethanol. And it's your job to take that ethanol, put it into your body, and turn it into joy. That's it. I'm going to do part 2 next time. Part 2 will be canopy management in practice. What do we do at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and how do we get ready for harvest in the sense of how to make the canopy making the best wine and preparing us to get those grapes out of the field and to make fantastic wine. I hope this influenced and sort of informed your wine drinking. I hope you guys had a good time. I'm going to be putting these up permanently on our YouTube channel, J. Wilkes Wines YouTube, Miller Family Wine Company YouTube. If you're just watching these shows and enjoying them and you want more and more and more, there's literally like 100 hours over on YouTube. Originally, the shows were a little long, so you have to settle in and listen to them and have dinner or something. But please do check out the YouTube channels. We could use some more views and follows over there. I really appreciate it. Anything you guys ever want to know or learn about or any questions, put them in the comments. Send me an email, whagen, Hagen, @jwilkes.com and or whagen@millerfamilywines.com. So I really, really appreciate all of your attention. I hope you guys had a fabulous time. And I'm seeing all the folks that are here, seeing Will and the Edelmans and Beth and Dawn and Christy and Betty and James and everybody else. And I will mention that I did get your message, Nick, and I will be sending you back some information about watering and some other stuff that you asked about. So send me emails, stay connected, and as I always say at the beginning, at the end of the show, take care of the people in your neighborhood. Find someone in your family, find someone in your neighborhood, maybe someone you don't know. Reach out to them and make sure that they're okay, that they're safe in this. And remember to wear a mask, be careful, and let's make sure that we see 2021 as a group so we can all be together drinking wine again. Thank you. Yeah, no doubt. My diabetic friend down in San Diego is telling me to go eat because he knows the sound that my phone is making. I'm at 78 glucose level. I'm totally safe. In fact, 78 is damn close to perfect for the body. So I will get some food. Really do appreciate all of your time, all of your effort. And if you're interested, go check out our YouTube channels. I will be back. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot. Friday. If you are interested in vibing on this viticulture and winemaking stuff, I'm having one of my favorite winemakers in the world come on Friday, and we're going to be hanging out for about an hour. And that's Dave Vergari from Vergari Wines. He's worked at so many different wineries. He's worked for Phelps. He's worked in Napa. He's worked in Australia. Worked for James Halliday. I'm going to be asking him some amazing questions. Friday, 5 to 6 is all about winemaking. It's all about questions from winemakers, how wine is made. A couple of very specific questions I'm going to be asking him, and of course we'll have our speed round, which I will try to fool him. But if he answers 6 of the 10 questions right, he gets free beer, which is terrible because it's my beer. But that's okay. I'll deal with it. So I hope all of you had a great time. We'll talk to you guys soon. It went a little long today, but you know me. I like to talk. Have a great night. Have a great day. Have a great summer. Take care of each other. And let's realize that science and flourishing right now, it's really where it's at. So trust science and do everything you can to make sure your community flourishes. And remember, it's not personal protection equipment, it's community protection equipment. There's a lot of vulnerable people out there, and we want to make sure that they're safe. Take good care, be well, be safe, be careful, and we'll see you on Friday. Cheers, guys.